Why should we be worried about the future? People are very unwise, selfish and short-sighted. Technology is enabling more and more people to make very bad long-term destructive decisions more and more rapidly. Microplastics, antibiotic resistance, rapidly rising CO2 levels, chemical pollution killing algae in the ocean leading to declining oxygen levels, take your pick. Rapid dying of bee colonies. Taken from President Jimmy Carter's A Crisis of Confidence speech in 1979. The confidence that we have always had as a people is not simply some romantic dream or proverb in a dusty book that we read just on the 4th of July. It is the idea which founded our nation and has guided our development as a people. Confidence in the future has supported everything else, public institutions and private enterprise, our own families, and the very Constitution of the United States. Confidence has defined our course and has served as a link between generations. We've always believed in something called progress. We've always had a faith that the days of our children would be better than our own. Our people are losing that faith, not only in government itself but in the ability as citizens to serve as the ultimate rulers and shapers of our democracy. As a people we know our past and we are proud of it. Our progress has been part of the living history of America, even the world. We always believed that we were part of a great movement of humanity itself called democracy, involved in the search for freedom. And that belief has always strengthened us in our purpose. But just as we are losing our confidence in the future, we are also beginning to close the door on our past. I just looked up this full speech and wow, it's amazingly similar to what we are facing today. I'm beginning to have a little faith in the future because if they suffered like we are spiritually and morally, as a community, then maybe all we are missing is a strong leader to guide us. I like how in his speech he places some of the blame for the nation's lack of moral on himself, citing weak leadership. I love reading on presidents in the past. They used to be so inspirational, charming and strong. I feel the opposite. We had a leader like this that correctly saw the problems in the world and tried to plan accordingly. And we immediately voted him out and replaced him with a Hollywood actor with dementia. And the problems have never been addressed. Voters in America don't want to hear the way ahead is difficult and will require sacrifice. They want their bread and circuses and will vote accordingly. Looming economic crisis in the United States. It's tough now? Let's see. Edit. I'm in the US. I understand the coronavirus has impacted the world economy. Economic crisis everywhere, not just the US. The global economy took a hit. Looming. LMAO. When the government starts giving out money like it's on Oprah, I think we can officially call it a crisis. Part of the reason they rushed the CARES Act is because they felt they took too long to respond to 2008. Well, I mean, asterisk gestures broadly. Yosemite is holding the fart. You mean Yellowstone? Could they both be gassy? Yosemite is like, so low on the list of real looming threats. Not in my book. It's right there after quicksand. I scrolled through the comments for about 10 seconds before I got too stressed and had to stop. Globalization and the internet allows the spreading of stupidity like people that trespass to take pictures of trains, people that climb on top of trains to be cooler ride for free, only to not have the chance to realize the train is electric and the mere proximity to the overhead wires fries them to a point where you can be lucky if you can be identified as human in a laboratory. If there is a sign warning of electricity, don't take it lightly and keep your distance. That stuff kills you before you can finish editing a Reddit com. This is really specific but interesting. Superbugs is one of the biggest potential threats out there. Right now we are overusing drugs like antibiotics at an alarming rate. As if they were like gummy bears or something. People take antibiotics for the smallest cold which could easily go away by itself in a few days. Because of COVID-19, right now cities and streets are being dumped with loads of disinfectants to kill bacteria and viruses, but what happens if all the bacteria and viruses susceptible to modern antibiotics and disinfectants die? For example, bacteria are always mutating, and when all the weaker ones are killed off, the only ones left are those which are immune and resistant to everything we've thrown at their species so far. What you're left with is strains of bacteria which do not die in alcohol and are resistant to modern, current medicine. That's so scary to think about, considering that there are things out there much worse than COVID. This may sound a little far-fetched, but there's a species of fungus which basically turns ants into zombies. What if something like that suddenly decides to mutate and jump into humans one day? There are ancient viruses and bacteria in the melting glaciers of the Arctic that are so old that they can't even be classified using modern science. Just look at what COVID has done so far. COVID is a test for the world in our preparedness for greater pandemic-level threats, and we're failing so far. If something worse and more resistant comes along, we're fucked. Countries shouldn't be amping up their defense budgets for their militaries. They should be amping up research dollars for biological treatments and research. 'Cause the real enemy isn't some foreign country, it's underneath the microscope. Did you just leak 2021? Lol, so you think 2020 is overdue, yeah? Because in the US we are being led by a gang of incompetent, criminal, dangerous people. We are all screwed. Period. I am so grateful I never had kids. I love my kids enough not to bring them into such a sty. Greater than in the US we are being led by a gang of incompetent, criminal, dangerous people. The biggest and most dangerous mistake Americans make is assuming that our leaders are incompetent. They are smart and wily as fuck and have absolutely no interest in helping the common person. They are, however, exceptionally good at helping themselves and their rich friends and packaging it to the common man as a benefit to the common man. The politicians aren't stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. Have you seen half the shit Trump says? He may have smart people behind him helping him pull the right, wrong strings, like Barr, but the man himself is a blithering idiot of the highest degree. The president in particular is very much a figurehead. He wields no real power whatsoever. He is apparently chosen by the government, but the qualities he is required to display are not those of leadership but those of finely judged outrage. For this reason, the president is always a controversial choice, always an infuriating but fascinating character. His job is not to wield power but to draw attention away from it. On those criteria, Zaphod Beeblebrox is one of the most successful presidents the galaxy has ever had. He has already spent 2 of his 10 presidential years in prison for fraud. Douglas Adams. Trump is their tool. Our elected officials, almost all of which are much older than us. I'm assuming that I'm speaking to a mostly millennial, Zoomer audience here. Have little or no interest in mitigating climate change before it's too late. They won't have to live with the after effects. We, and our children and children's children, if they end up existing, will. They're bequeathing us a world that's increasingly unlivable because of their greed and malice. I've always seen politics as electing people who are living 40 to 50 years in the past. Sure, they may be wise, but they don't necessarily do what's the best for future generations. I've been looking into quantum computing recently, and the capabilities will be super amazing. Basically, current security measures will not matter because a quantum computer will break today's encryption methods extremely quickly, within a day. While I agree, I really think it's just a rat race. Encryption methods will catch up eventually. Metal music and grunge fading away from the mainstream. Maybe it's fading, but trust me, if you know where to look, there is just so much metal. Actually, I think metal is getting more popular. I see a lot of Gen Z kids practicing guitar or drums. There's at least some interest. That it's becoming harder and harder for a generation to make an income that will give them a life as good as the parents, unless they started with a reservoir of capital. I honestly have no excitement or hope about my future outside of high school. I expect it to just be me killing myself working, only to still be broke. Pollinators are dying. Without pollinators, nature as we know it might cease to exist, meaning the very basic environment that allows us to live is actively dying, and we're all doing basically nothing to stop it. Global warming. But I experienced winter last season, and it wasn't warm at all. It baffles me how so many people fail to do a very simple reflection, to actually think over the fact there might be a reason for so many scientists who actually know a lot about the subject, and world leaders to say that climate change is happening. That perhaps you, who know little to nothing about the subject, should listen to the people who knows a lot about it. War over water. Antibiotic resistance. There will come a point in which antibiotics won't work on most bacteria and infections. Diseases will be so hard to cure. It will be like going back to the 1800s where people would die for a cough. There's something called bacteriophages that help the body get rid of diseases like antibiotics. The main difference is bacteriophages don't attack human cells at all. Once the technology gets improved, it will be a great thing. And the best part is if bacteria become resistant to it, they lose their resistance to antibiotics. And vice versa. Malignancy has been rising in popularity. Compassion of any sort is often called virtue signaling, and being empathetic is considered weak. Most stuff that I see ragged on as virtue signaling are people videotaping themselves doing nice things, which is kind of awful. If you're going to tip some waiter, waitress $200, that's great. Why do we need a video and some big spectacle made out of it? You're right, that is awful. But have you ever seen any abuse of the term? Like linking a donation page, or talking about a cause you believe in? I genuinely haven't, but I would agree that, within reason, in that context it seems like it would be a misuse of the term monsieur. The God capital yet propounds the carcinogenic gospel of endless growth. Simply put, human economies need to stop seeking growth, and need to instead seek to serve the benefit of all. All the shitty shit people mentioning in this thread, with the added fact that we as a species know better but aren't doing anything to stop it. A little here and there. Sure, but the tide of all this shit is rising. We're terrible. We shouldn't. Worrying just makes things worse. Make preparations against future problems if you can. But don't spend your energy worrying when you've done that. Free speech is dying. The people who should protect it mock it. And the only people talking about it are the ones who hate it. Where have people been arrested and charged for speech? Actually asking. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.